is
two,
Pop
one.
Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Brian with an N.
And I'm GIF with 2 F's.
Oh my, that's an odd one there. I
Well,
thought Pete
sometimes
was
people
having a
spell it
stroke
Well,
at first.
it ties into the movie. It ties into a line in the movie, so we'll talk
Okay.
about it.
That's
Little
true.
teaser.
Well,
Well, I'll just say I'm glad that you're doing to lead this tonight, Pete, because I had my first day of
it's
school
good.
today,
It's
and I
so good.
talked all day, and I'm talked out. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
yeah. Oh
Not
no.
good.
Man, you
But
have the wrong hobby to be doing podcasting then.
Exactly.
But you picked. I mean, I'm gonna have plenty to say. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. This was, like I said in the other one, this was my other choice, and it was just torture choosing between the two. So I'm so glad you picked it.
Yeah, I am
Mhm.
too. I felt the same way about my picks as well. This was my 1A.
Yes, 1A and 1B.
Yeah. But it would have been my 1B, I guess. Yes.
Correct.
So,
So Pete, what did you pick?
Well, I do want to say that it was a difficult decision. I went back and forth. I wrestled with the decision
So this was your 1A.
between this movie and and Footloose was the other one. There's
yeah,
just a
go on.
million great movies from 1984,
Yes.
but I really wrestled back and forth.
I'm
Eventually,
really glad you
I
picked
landed.
this over Footloose.
Well, Footloose.
Wow.
It was a movie that I enjoyed, but maybe not until I was a little bit older. This is a movie I actually remember, like going to the
Yes,
theater,
that's
seeing
it.
it in the theater, enjoying it as a kid. And from what I can remember, it was probably the first sports movie that I really enjoyed. You know, it's a niche sport, being karate, but it was the first one that I can remember that had that climactic finish, kind of like The Natural also came out the same
Also a
year.
very abrupt finish.
Yes.
Yes, I have that written down too. We'll get to that, but there's a
It's
reason
so
for that,
crazy how this
which I
movie
looked
just
up.
it's so drawn
Yes.
out, and then it's just bump
Boom.
done.
Done. Yeah.
But there's a reason for that I found, and
Ah.
we'll get to that. But we are talking about the movie Karate Kid tonight.
The Karate
This
Kid.
was one that, as we were talking before we began the recording, I hadn't seen this in many, many years. I can't even remember the last time I saw it, but it was probably when I was in high school or earlier that
Oh
I've
my
actually
God.
sat down and watched this movie all the way through. I
I
know
watch
that
this regularly.
we
I do.
now we have Cobra Kai, which we'll talk about a little bit later too, which is on Netflix, which is it's a really awesome show. I love the show, and I think there's a new season coming out now.
I think it starts
Um,
Friday.
It starts Friday.
So of course
Season
this
5,
podcast
right?
will be late, but
It starts
from when we're
Friday to
recording this,
us.
I
Doesn't
didn't even
matter.
know it was coming, but Hummel made a comment that it comes Friday.
There's no time in podcast land, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
But to us, it'll be Friday.
Yeah.
But I just remember as a kid, this whole movie is very engaging because obviously Mr. Miyagi is as engaging as it gets as far as as this wise character that you're really soaking it all in as an 8-year-old, which is what I was when this movie, we all were when this movie came out. You're soaking in all of these wise, little bits of advice that he's throwing out there, and probably had a big influence on who I am as a human being. I don't know about that, but
Well, living your life through his isms is a very wise way to go.
Yes, exactly, and this is why we all turned out the way that we did. Pretty darn good. There's probably some bits of advice we could apply to the podcast. We'll get into those as we talk through them. But I loved it. There's a couple of scenes that are a little bit cheesy and hokey, but that you get that with any 80s movie. And that's just part of the fun of watching it. So what do you guys have to say about the movie at a high level?
Well, like I said, I watch this regularly. It's a part of my canon. So I mentioned in 87, one of my other we didn't get to this movie, which I still think sucks. We'll get to it someday, somehow. But this and The Princess Bride, when I think of the most perfect movies I've ever watched and can just watch over and over again, these are two of the first two that always come to my mind,
Mhm.
and they have for my whole life. It's a perfect movie. Um, and I watched it as a kid. I saw it many, many times. I watched it with friends. I've watched it with my kids in here and my family. It's such a great family movie
Mhm.
that you can
Mhm.
watch it with your kids once they're old enough to follow along. It's got so many great performances in it, like you said. Pat Morita was even up for an Oscar for this movie.
Yes, he was.
And it's one of those things that's just, like you said, Pete, it was important to us then, and so that's a great choice. But this is something that has become a piece of pop culture that's been relevant ever since.
Yep.
We talked about How I Met Your Mother earlier. Johnny was on there, and they mentioned it so many times on there, and everybody that watched the show knew exactly what you're talking about because everybody saw The Karate Kid. Cobra Kai now is a huge show that kids and adults love it for the nostalgia. Kids love it
Mhm.
because it's just fun to watch. And so it's just that relevant, awesome, perfect movie, and I love it so much.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a
See
rave
ya. I'm gonna
review.
be leaving
For
now.
you to put it in the same breath as The Princess Bride, that for
Oh yeah,
you, that's extremely high praise. I
it
didn't realize
is.
that you felt that strongly about this movie.
I do. That's why it was such a hard choice between 16
Mhm.
Candles. But that was the movie that first struck me, so I had to pick it, and then I crossed my fingers that one of you guys would pick this.
Yep, I did too. Yeah,
And
because it's so
gosh
good.
darn it, you came through.
Hmm.
Of course.
Well, to kick this off for me, I would like to
Oh my God.
wax nostalgic
Jeez,
about a movie that
wow.
really packs a punch and is right up our alley. I remember the first.
Allie.
Did you catch all those?
I got all of them. That was fantastic.
How long you been working on that
Yeah.
intro?
Was I able to paint a picture for you there?
Since he was 8.
So the first time I remember, my first memory of watching this movie was we went on a family trip out to Yellowstone,
I was
and
just there last month.
there you go. Yeah, it was there way back when I went too. Weird. We met up with my uncle and aunt's family in Billings, and we stayed with them for a night before heading out with them to Yellowstone. And I remember we watched this movie with my cousins and my brother. Um, and I just remember how awesome it was. Of course, as a over hyper kid, seeing the karate scenes with the kicking and the punching, it was just so
The
cool.
kicking and the punching,
And I
The
just
bipping
remember,
and the
flipping and the
bop.
flopping,
I just remember the fight scene
the hipping and a dipping.
where Mr. Miyagi kicked that kid in the nuts, and that's what stuck with me. I was like, oh, he just kicked him right in the nards. So I've loved this movie since the first time I saw it. Again, like what you guys were saying, the life lessons, I think, in rewatching it as you get older, you pick up more on those. As a kid, you like the action. As a uh, undersized, dorky kid, it was a fun movie to watch. To think that, yeah, if I'm getting bullied, the dork can rise up and avenge, being bullied and stuff like that. And
And how did that work out for you when you tried?
I've never been in a fight because I'm not the Karate Kid, so never really worked out that way. But it's just such a fun movie to watch.
It
So great
inspired
pick.
me to rise up against the bullies and get my ass totally kicked. You know what, Gifford? I think what I thought of your little diatribe there.
Yeah,
You're the best.
I'm the best around.
You're the best around.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you brought up sports movies, Pete, and one thing I did not realize until watching it this time is that movie was directed by the same director as Rocky.
Yes.
I never knew that
Oh,
before.
Mm-hmm.
there is a connection there. As long as we
That
just
is
talked
some
about
weird,
you're the
wild
best.
stuff.
Well, I'll get into one of my fun facts while we're on the topic. The song "You're the Best" was originally written for Rocky 3, but then
Joe
when they
Esposito.
came out with "Eye of the Tiger," um, then they liked that one better for Rocky 3, and so they took that song and put it in this movie.
Yes.
So there you go. There's your first fun fact of the evening.
Right. Well, and this movie was such a massive success. It grossed just under 131 million at the box office and was the 5th highest earner for the year of 84. So that was
what a great
awesome.
movie to finish our month with.
Right. And it's also
my
credited
God.
with boosting the popularity of karate in the United States.
Of course.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course. Well, when my
I'm
son
not
did karate
surprised.
for a couple months, of course, the first thing he did is take a picture in the thing and then write wax on, wax off. And
Did he?
well, of course, that's what you do.
That's pretty cool.
Huh.
So
right.
one of the things, if you want to talk about the cast just a little bit, this is the movie debuts for both William Zabka and Elizabeth Shue. And one of the things that I thought interesting, because we just did Ghostbusters, of course, and in Ghostbusters you had William Atherton, who plays the prick,
Punchable guy.
the punchable guy in both Die Hard and Ghostbusters. And of course, Zabka would go on to play Audrey's boyfriend in the European Vacation, plays a prick in that.
Yes.
And then also
Yeah.
plays Chaz in Back to School.
Oh, yeah. Well, he became typecast. He was.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But he does it so well. I mean, he really brings the jerk to the table.
I can't
I would actually
remember.
punch him if this one.
I try to block European Vacation out of my mind. Was he a jerk in that movie?
Well, he wasn't in it for very much.
Well, I know he
was
wasn't in it
just
for much. I thought he was just kind of there, and I forget.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know that. Yeah,
It was just a hard relationship because Audrey was so whiny and complainy, but I don't think he was doing much to really allay her.
But anyway, he definitely went on to play
Bruce.
this role.
Wait a second.
Again.
Didn't he cheat on her though? I mean, wasn't that part of the beginning? Like
I think
he
they
was gonna
referred
break up
to
with
it.
her.
Yeah,
We
I
still
thought he
we didn't
referred to
see
it.
him being like a jerk, like usually in a movie.
All right.
Maybe we just assumed that he was because of Chaz and Johnny.
Yeah.
But again, great
But
actor.
I love him actually. We're not talking about Cobra Kai until later a little bit, but I love him in Cobra Kai. I love.
He's the
his
best thing about
character.
it. That show would be
Yes.
terrible without him.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
We'll say a little more about that later then.
Yeah. So shall we dive into the movie?
Yes, let's go.
All right. So I actually, the first thing that struck me was how young Ralph Macchio actually looks in this movie. I don't remember because
And he's like
back when
25,
I saw it
right?
originally,
He's 22.
he looks younger than that.
Yeah.
Because
so
I just
scrawny.
remember thinking, because you're a little kid watching it, and he's like a senior in high school or whatever he is in this movie, or he's not even that old in the movie.
He's probably a sophomore because he turned
I would
16.
guess he's 15, turned 16. That's right.
Yep.
He gets his driver's license. How scrawny and young that he looked. And I just didn't remember him looking that young and scrawny. But that was the first thing that jumped out at me. And Jenny actually said the same thing. We watched it together last night. We start out, they are in Newark, New Jersey. They're obviously they don't have a lot of money. It's just the mother and the son. Did they give a lot of like backstory about like the dad and the family or what happened?
There
was
nothing about a dad anywhere in the movie.
My question is,
yeah.
Did you guys remember, since you haven't watched it, do you remember the beginning of this? Because you forget how
No.
like long and drawn out this opening is. There's
Yes,
no action.
that's what I was just going to say.
It's a lot of scenery, and it's like, oh, really? That's how this starts.
One thing I remembered from the beginning is when they're leaving that restaurant or motel and they got to push the car to get it going. That's pretty much the first thing I remember.
That sets up a scene later.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because it's that old station wagon, that puke green station wagon with a dent in the back that they're driving. So they're establishing that they don't have a lot of money. Pretty much all of their belongings fit in the station wagon except the bike. The bike they have to take on the top of the car, but that's it. But you're right. It's a very long, drawn out opening where they're driving across the country. I enjoyed it. I love a good road trip. But
Well, there's some good scenery, a lot of desert there.
yeah, it is.
Daniel is not
Um,
excited for this, though. He did not want to move, and the mom sets her right up as being this annoying character too.
I thought
Right.
she was not so much annoying as just doing her best to put a
Well,
good face on.
Yes, she's annoying to him,
Right.
but she's doing her as a parent now. She's trying.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
Doing
Good
everything
point.
she
he's
can.
trying.
So we come to find out that they're moving because she got a job with some computer company.
In the computer
The
business.
computer business.
Yes.
That's the first thing I thought of was The Room. Fans of The Room. Gifford, you haven't seen The Room yet,
I have not
you?
seen The Room.
Oh,
But
God.
but
That's
she
one of the
ends
key
but
things.
she ends up being a hostess at a restaurant. So essentially they moved all the way across the country for her to get a restaurant job. You couldn't find that in Newark. I don't know. I just thought that was a little strange.
Yeah, and then things just get worse after they get out there. Now, they wind up living they find a place in this apartment building. Now, does Johnny live in the very same apartment
What? No.
in Cobra Kai?
In Cobra Kai, it
Um,
looks
Oh,
like
in
that's
Cobra
the same
Kai.
kind of apartment. I don't know if it's the same
It's
one,
similar.
but it's
I
definitely
thought it was at
similar.
the same complex at least,
I'm
and it
not sure if
certainly
it's the
looked.
same, but it's that reversal of that's how they did it.
You know what? I bet it probably is. I bet they.
I don't think it is, but I could be wrong.
I thought it looked a lot like.
I think it's
I'll have to
living
meant
go
to
in
back.
the
look
exact
similar.
same apartment.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure it's the same complex anyway.
It's
But so we do meet early on in the movie. We meet Mr. Miyagi, who is the maintenance man at the complex, which I didn't remember exactly how he fit into the picture or how they met him in the first place until
Oh, yeah.
watching it again the second time. And it's very brief that you even know that he's the maintenance man. And they don't address it much. And Mr. Miyagi, one thing that I noticed is that he's got a couple of appearances in the movie, but he doesn't really come on to the scene until 30 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
That's when they start cutting the bonsai. He starts teaching him the little things about the bonsai trees.
it's
But
bonsai.
before that, it's
Bonsai.
more bonsai.
Yeah.
But they're
Before
setting up the
Mr.
rest of
Miyagi,
the
though,
story.
Before
Yes.
Mr. Miyagi, we meet Freddy Fernandez,
Yep.
who seemingly is going to be an important friend character, who's one of the most short-lived characters in a movie that I can think of.
Well, and
He's
shortly
despicable.
after you meet Freddy, you also meet
Happy
lady with the dog is Happy Gilmore's grandma. Yes.
And the old lady that got her bread stolen from Seinfeld.
Oh
the
yeah.
Oh,
Seinfeld
that's
Was the
right.
episode.
She's
was it
all of
Pumpernickel
those.
or the Marble Rye?
The Marble Rye.
Yes.
Yes.
That is correct.
What a career.
Well, but he meets this Freddy guy, and of course, the way he meets him is he kicks a door in and hits the kid, and the kid is really nice to him. I mean,
Well, yeah, he seems
Totally
great.
cool about it.
right off the bat. I mean, here
Got a good friend.
he finds a kid who invites him to, to go out to the beach the next day, and it must be the last day of summer because they go to school the day after the beach. So like right away, it's like, well, this isn't so bad. He meets
Yeah.
somebody his own age who's nice to him, gonna introduce him to a bunch of people, and starts out pretty good. And
Right.
of course, we meet Allie at the beach the next day as well.
Our first introduction to Mr. Miyagi, too, he's very mysterious because he actually comes off a little bit rude and kind of crazy before you get to the bonsai and all that stuff. I mean, he is not very interested or helpful to them.
No.
So
Right.
you got that mystery about this guy.
What was it? I didn't write down what was wrong with their. What was
The
why did they
kitchen
have to call the
faucet.
maintenance man?
The kitchen
Okay.
faucet wasn't working. It was leaking
Yeah.
or whatever.
Later.
Okay,
After.
so-
I'll fix it after.
Mm-hmm. After.
Right.
So you brought up Elizabeth Shue, who, what a wonderful person she is. But
Mhm.
that beach scene, I remember the Bananarama, obviously Cruel Summer, which
Yep.
I realized is not actually until school.
Yep.
I always thought it was there. That song that plays in the beach scene is god awful.
Yes.
It sounds like an advertisement jingle being done by a Beach Boys cover band. It is. I couldn't believe how bad it was. And
Yeah.
I was thinking it's Cruel Summer, and then we'll listen to this crap instead.
Yep.
So that really threw me for a loop.
So also with the beach scene, if I remember correctly, I didn't look it up again, but this was the same beach from Point Break.
Oh,
That's
that's
right.
not surprising. Yeah.
I mentioned that when because we discussed that in our Point Break episode.
And you
Please
said
go
it
back
reference
and
it if you don't believe it.
yeah, please go back
Yeah.
and listen to Point Break episode. It was a doozy.
That's for sure.
So
And I just wrote, these guys are so nice. Daniel, it's like, what a great group of guys he found to hang out with, just like that.
Yep.
And he found a girl right away too.
Yeah, things are looking up.
Then it all goes downhill. Though.
Dirt bikers.
Well, and the music that kicks in for them too is like, ominous and kind of punky and when they come on. So total 80s, music for the introduction of the bad boys.
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny is just a complete spaz with Allie. It's like, why would he destroy her boombox? You just right off the bat this guy's crazy.
Right. And and of course they had just broken up. She doesn't want anything to do with him. And of course Daniel steps in to help out. But I would argue here too, he's kind of a spaz. I mean, he doesn't know anybody and he gets right into a fight with a guy.
Yeah.
There's some shit that Daniel kind of deserves some of the shit that he got into.
Because like you see the guys, I
disagree here.
These guys come down the hill on their bikes, and the guys that Daniel's with, like they go in and start talking to those guys right away. You can tell they're friendly with them. Like, so even the guys he's been hanging out with all day are cool with these kids who came in on the bikes.
Oh, I guess I might have missed that.
Oh no, because Johnny starts, messing with Allie,
right. That's what I remember.
And in the meantime, Daniel's group and Johnny's group, they're all talking. They're hanging out. They're having a nice time. And then Daniel kind of starts, steps in to help out and then has to get his ass kicked.
Well, I've totally missed that little plot point in all my viewings then because I always thought, what a bunch of dickheads these guys are. Their friend that they loved just gets the crap beat out of him and they just walk away and leave him laying there. It's like,
well, I think that's because they were at least friendly with the other guys.
Well, I get that now.
Yeah, so it's like I wouldn't want to hang out with that guy either. Then
once again, you've come through and taught me something new.
Well, and
but a part of it, we find out later, these guys are dicks because they are all being taught by John Kreese at Cobra Kai, and that is the way of Cobra Kai.
Right. So
but
basically, Freddie starts being nice to him, and then that goes downhill. And Allie is really the only person besides his mom in the beginning who's decent to Daniel.
Well, that's really the only person that's decent to him in the whole movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Besides Mr. Miyagi comes around, but
right.
As far as a kid.
Yeah. So Allie's kind of helping him along quite a bit, just being kind of a lifeboat in this sea of bullies and new people that he's not getting along with. So at least she's nice.
Yeah. And so like you guys, and that's the big thing from How I Met Your Mother is like turning it around and blaming Daniel. Mm-hmm. And I don't think on the beach, I don't think he deserves that. But
no,
when he gets tripped in the soccer game at school, and then he just jumps up, and that's when he spazzes out and tackles and punches the guy in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
okay, that's a little much right there.
Right. Well, and then later,
on the beach, he had balls though because he did punch Johnny back,
and I think
which was a ballsy move. He was right to, but I wouldn't have done it when you're already getting your ass handed to you, and there's 5. It's like 5 against 1.
I would have been laying on the ground acting like I was dead. I wouldn't have done anything.
Yeah, I would have rolled myself up into a ball.
Covered yourself in sand.
Kick me around. Yeah. Put my head in the sand.
So that
maybe they won't see me.
That soccer
playing ostrich.
That soccer scene at school is the next day. So they've gone through a day of school. He's going through soccer tryouts. And of course, I think it's Bobby who it's a hard tackle, basically takes his legs out.
Well, he gets tripped. It's a tackle.
That's a tackle in soccer terms, in football terms.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, right. Well,
so anyway, but it's a cheap move.
But
yeah,
sucks.
Daniel just jumps up and goes right at him, and it's like, seriously, like what the, like have a little bit of chill.
I know that was stupid.
And then
that's where he went to be really stupid.
And then he's got this whole time where things are okay. He's kind of avoiding these guys. And then you go to the dance, and he's the one who instigates it again with the hose over the bathroom stall.
Yeah.
This is where he did deserve to get his ass kicked.
Yes, he does. Like the first 3 times, or the first 2 times he gets his ass kicked, I mean, he really kind of asked for it.
And and he's still wearing the shower thing. And we're jumping a little bit ahead here, but he's still wearing the shower thing and trying to run away. It's like, if you need to run, I don't know that that's the costume that I would choose.
Right.
Yeah.
Too much wind
take
resistance.
It off before you put the hose in, so that he should have gotten away. I mean,
yeah, he had trouble getting out of the bathroom, and he ran into the other guy. But still, it was a classic scene. Do you remember, Brad, when our friend Dennis went to a Halloween? Went to a costume party dressed as that.
It was Keisha, not Dennis.
As the
I thought
shower?
it was Dennis.
But yeah, it was incredible. It was exactly the same. It was so awesome.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Aside from my wife's Towley costume, that was like the other greatest costume I've ever seen.
How old was the kid? Wearing the shower costume?
No, it was his wife.
No, it was a grown-up. We were like in our 20s.
Kim's friend, our age.
Oh, got you now. Sorry, yes. All right, I got you.
It was maybe 20 years ago, but it was
about 20 years
ago. But I thought, I'm watching, thinking how ridiculous the shower costume is. But then when she joins him in the shower, I'm like, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
That's brilliant. Well, and the other thing I was thinking of with Halloween costumes, you know how you got a Halloween costume, and then you've got the slutty Halloween costume version of that same costume.
Yep.
This is the perfect Halloween costume for the slutty to slutty it up, because you could have somebody underneath there just buck naked.
Well, you're in a shower, so
yeah. So
exactly.
It's perfect because you got the shower curtain. You're perfectly okay. You're covered, and then open her up and dance with your girl, and So it's the perfect costume to slut up.
On to the next one then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so after the Halloween, so the Halloween dance is being held. We just talked about.
Can we back up just a minute?
Oh yeah.
Gifford jumped ahead.
Sorry.
There's a really important scene that I just want to. So he gets beat up by the bike, or his bike. I don't remember what happened, but anyway. Daniel gets home and he goes, I hate this damn bike. I hate this stupid bike. And he throws it in the dumpster. And, his life is just his low point.
Oh, yeah. That's important.
But the next day, the bike is all shined up and fixed, sitting outside his door.
Yep.
And that's what brought him. He realized Miyagi did it. That's what brought him to him and made their first connection. And that was really cool. Because to that point, Miyagi had done nothing. He was just this weird guy. But that was a really nice thing. So,
right. This was when. This is when he's doing the bonsai trees,
which helps Daniel calm down because he needs that.
Right. It's therapy. It's therapeutic for him. So that's when Miyagi sort of teaches him how to focus on, like, close your eyes and think of a picture, and then remember the picture and then cut it into the bonsai tree. Which we never did see how that turned out, really.
This brings us to that dance because he said he wanted to go as the Invisible Man, and Mr. Miyagi is the guy who created the shower costume so he could be invisible and hide in there. So it's all connected.
Well, you could see the materials for the shower costume.
Yeah, they're hanging
behind
it's
Daniel.
partially assembled. Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing too is, so he runs away after putting the hose on Johnny. But he also causes a 3-car pileup in the street.
Yeah.
Pretty major damage because of him running away.
Right.
So then we get to the big fight scene. The 9-second fight scene between, I guess Daniel's getting his butt kicked first. What I wrote down,
chase scene and then a fight scene. Yeah,
a lot of chasing.
What I wrote down here was once they caught up to him and got a hold of him and put a few licks on him there, Bobby is the one who tries to call off his friends.
One of them actually tries to calm Johnny down and say, he's had enough.
Yep. And of course, Johnny's like, I'll say when he's had enough, because again, according to their teacher, there's no mercy. You always finish off your opponent. And
All right,
we
now
see.
Now I'm thinking of Purple Lamborghini.
Okay, then.
That's the intro
It's
to the
song.
Gopher
It's
Games.
the Ain't No Mercy song.
Okay.
If you go to Gopher Games with us, you'd know it. So
Yeah,
Okay.
you would. You're the one wearing the Gopher shirt.
Yes.
All right.
So this is where we see Mr. Miyagi creeping in from behind here and
this is so
comes
good
in
when
to
he jumps
save
off
the day.
fence.
Yeah.
Is there music there too? It's just like, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Or is it just like a sound? I can't remember. It's just there's something there though that
I just remember Mr. Miyagi is shadow. He's in the shadows, and you just kind of see his silhouette. But if you watch, he's not really kicking those guys that hard. it wouldn't have put a dent in.
Except for the guy who got it right in the nut sack. I mean, that looked like that would have hurt.
Yeah, but I don't know. But that was just one thing that stood out to me as I was watching. Is he's not even like putting any weight into these guys. But anyway, it was still a good scene nonetheless, because it's when you first see Miyagi's karate expertise, and he saves Daniel, probably saved his life, and so then Daniel realizes how good he is, and then he wants him to teach him.
Yep.
And so that's what takes their relationship to the next level in that regard.
Yes.
And he wants to go back to Cobra Kai with him, and Daniel says, "I'll get killed if I go there." And Miyagi says, "Get killed anyway."
Yeah.
That's a great line.
Yeah, now we start in on a little funny, quirky lines that
Yes.
that Miyagi has. That
The
do
lines
make
start
you
coming
laugh,
in.
and they are legitimately funny. And Pat Morita almost didn't get the job when he auditioned for this role, because he was a comedic actor in the past. He had been on Happy Days and some other things, always been a comedian. But this was more of a serious role, and we'll get to later, has some depth to this character.
Yes.
But he incorporated the comedy pretty well into the character, in addition to some of the other things.
Well, and that's what makes the movie great, is many of his lines. Like in this scene here, Daniel asks, when they're talking about his karate and learning karate growing up, and Daniel asks him, "Well, what kind of belt do you have?" And he looks down at his belt and he says, "Canvas from JCPenney, $3.95."
I got that written down too.
I mean, it's so good. I mean, he knows what he's asking him, but he's got to be a smart ass, and he always tries to steer it into a lighthearted moment.
Well, there's a lesson in there too. There's a lesson that he's giving Daniel. It doesn't matter, what belt you are. It's just a label, and it doesn't really tell you anything about how good you are.
That's good.
Because I thought there was a little bit of depth to that too.
Well, and later in the movie, there's a line that he says where, because he hasn't been training that long. I mean, he basically trains for 48 days before this tournament. And Daniel says something about how he doesn't think he knows enough karate. And Mr. Miyagi tells him it's not how much you know, it's the quality of what you know.
Right.
And that would go back to, it doesn't matter if you're a black belt, it's you know what you know, and it's better than what these other guys are being taught.
So the tournament, the big thing about going to Cobra Kai is Miyagi cuts a deal. So we meet Sensei Kreese now too, and how we start to get the idea. But they make the big deal that you're going to leave Daniel alone until the tournament. That's where it's going to be done, and so that helps Daniel at least live his life.
Right.
Miyagi sets that up for him too.
Yes.
We also find out that Miyagi has a way cool house with really awesome cars when he goes to get his first lesson.
Yes.
Right.
And of course, the lessons have nothing to do, in quotation marks, nothing to do with karate that Daniel can see. Because we start with first lesson is to wash the cars, and that's where we have the famous wax on, wax off scenes. And basically, we come to find out that's all about muscle memory and technique. And if you do it enough over and over and over again, that, something will sink in.
Most of those moves don't really match up what he was doing.
No, no.
No, not at all.
But
And I would like to talk to somebody that's an actual karate expert and see how well that would align with what you're taught as well. But
Show me
let's
paint
not
fence.
overthink of it.
No.
Let's not
I'm
overthink
just
it. Let's have
saying.
fun.
When he says wax
Sure.
on, show me wax on. The movie makes is like that's nothing like what he was doing on the car.
Wax on. Like, so basically, he has to go through the chores, right? He starts with the cars, the wax on, wax off. He moves to sand. Yes, Pete. He moves to sand the floor, which is a different motion that he needs to do. And of course, he's got this huge deck that needs to be sanded, so that takes forever by hand. The next chore is to paint the fence.
Before he gets to these other chores, though, we have one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which is his date with Allie.
Oh, at golf and stuff.
Yeah, golf and stuff.
Yes,
but we get
I want to
the
go
other
there.
part of this movie.
By the way, that looks awesome.
You have the culture clash because he goes to pick up Allie, and she's this rich girl in this big house, which is like Johnny is. And then Daniel and his mom come with this crappy car that won't even move, and so it's already awkward. But they have a wonderful date. It's a great montage.
Yep.
So, but then again, Daniel is just this little bitch at the end of it. When the friends ask her to go out and she says she didn't do anything wrong. She stayed with him, and he just turns into like, it's like, what's your deal, man?
Right.
I thought the same thing too.
And if you're Barney Stinson, you may look at that scene as Johnny just inviting a friend to go out and have fun, and Daniel turning into, like you say, kind of a little bitch.
Right. He takes it out on her though, which is completely stupid.
Right. Yeah. So when I watched it this time, I was trying to watch it through the lens of Barney Stinson a little bit to see if I could see it from his side, but no, Johnny is a dick and his buddies are all dicks. And I mean, so
when he's doing these next lessons though, that you brought up too, though, there's also the scene where Mr. Miyagi's trying to catch a fly with chopsticks.
Yes.
And Daniel catches it, and that makes Miyagi mad. You beginner luck.
You beginner luck, right? Well, and that was Miyagi said, a man who can catch a fly with chopsticks can accomplish anything. So right away, the thing that Daniel has to accomplish is painting the fence.
Paint fence.
Yes. And I love this scene because, of course, he teaches him how to do it. And Daniel comes by a little bit later and he's like, oh, yeah, all done. And right away, Mr. Miyagi looks at him and says, both sides? I mean, Daniel's, is just shoulders slump and he's like, no.
But that's a big turning point again, because this is where Daniel finally breaks and says, what am I doing? This makes no sense.
That was after Paint the House.
Oh, well, I've got it right.
Yeah,
here,
because he went.
But
fishing.
anyway, then he shows him all the moves, and so it's all part of the same thing here.
He Miyagi'd him.
He Miyagi'd him.
Yeah.
A real eye opener.
Right.
They start practicing on the beach, and he sees the crane kick and all this other stuff. We got a lot of like montage type things going on here too.
I would like to ask a karate expert as well, Pete. Does it help to learn balance to go out into the surf and kick waves?
I've tried that before because of this movie. When I was in the ocean, I had to do it and see if I could. It doesn't work well at all.
No. Well, with all the shark attacks going on these days, that might have to be the new thing you do out in the ocean is just kick at waves in case the shark's in there.
It's a shark randomly in a wave, and I got him.
So beginner luck.
Yes.
Oh man!
The
man who can apply crane technique on shark can accomplish anything.
Right.
The other thing about Johnny not being a good guy is it's clinched when they're at the country club again, and then so Daniel's going to pick him up, and Johnny sees him there, and he just forces himself on Allie on the dance floor. It's like, that's not cool.
Well, not only that, but Allie's parents, because Allie hits Johnny after he forcefully kisses her, and then runs away, and Allie's parents are dancing right next to him, see the whole thing, and then comfort Johnny. Like, you just sexually assaulted their daughter, and you're asking about how the boy's doing?
All those rich people sticking together.
Well, and then it's the scene here where Johnny slips and falls, and has all of the
Oh,
spaghetti sauce all over himself.
Daniel.
Danny, I'm sorry. But then he's got all the spaghetti sauce, and everybody sees it.
Yeah.
And it's a really extended, drawn out laughter scene.
That's a
Everyone
little
just
much too.
erupts and pointing and laughing, and
Yeah.
it's like,
well,
that
and what
might be a
makes, what
scene
makes
that's
it
not quite
worse,
perfect.
what makes it worse is the guy, Daniel's wearing a white shirt and white pants,
Of course.
and it's marinara sauce everywhere, and it's like, oh, you know, you're never gonna get that out.
so he totally made an ass of himself with his girl there, and
And of course, he didn't
everyone's
see
laughing at him.
Allie. He didn't see Allie punch Johnny.
Nope.
So he's mad at her because he thinks that she's, you know, cuddling back up to her old beau, and you know, so that, you know, sets them apart for a while.
So now we get to a scene back at Miyagi's, where it is the moving scene where you really see the multiple layers of Mr. Miyagi. Now we had seen earlier, which we didn't mention, there was Miyagi was kneeling at this little table that's in his house, and he had passed out, or he was snoring.
No, he was meditating.
While sitting. Well, he was snoring though when he went to go check on him.
No, he was just
I think
humming.
I remember snoring too, Pete.
Really?
Yeah,
no, I always took that
think,
as he was humming, like meditating and humming.
No, I thought he was snoring. But anyway, we get to this scene, and so now he's basically doing the same thing, and Danny kind of checks on what exactly this is all about. And now Miyagi he had been drinking, was really drunk.
He's drunk.
And everything. And then we come to find out that he is looking at this picture. He's kneeling to this picture of his wife who had died. We find out in the same scene, she had died during childbirth.
Yes, and this is the anniversary of that.
Yeah, many years ago. Yeah, and so he was having a drink with her, and he's laughing and drunk at first and everything, but then as the scene goes on, he kind of breaks down, and he's crying by the end of it when he kind of passes out with tears streaming down his face. And so this is the scene that, to me, you say he was nominated for an Oscar. This would be the scene that probably gave him that nomination.
Yes, and they wanted to take this scene out.
What?
They didn't want this scene in there because it was too heavy, and it wasn't, you know, it was showing him drinking, and it wasn't going along with the rest of the
end when Daniel leaves and he bows to him and shows that respect. That's really cool because you see how much he loves him. But a little side note with this scene that I didn't realize until much later, but there's that article and it says Manzanar, it's where they died. And we didn't learn anything about Japanese internment camps in school. Nobody talks about that. But now I'm a teacher, and we read this book called Farewell to Manzanar when I started teaching, and I learned all about Japanese intern camps, and I learned all about that specific camp. And so when I got older and saw it mentioned in the movie here, I thought, oh, that's really cool. And now I understand what that is.
And Mr. Miyagi's military unit was the 442nd Regimental Combat Team.
The most decorated unit in history.
U.S. military history, and it was made up
all Japanese,
mostly Japanese Americans from internment camps, and they fought in Europe
and that's
during World War II. Yes.
Wow, that is a good fact.
But these are things I teach my kids in class.
These are things that this podcast teaches me.
Right. As I thought about this scene, I thought it told so much of a backstory as to why he is sort of taking Danny in and being this mentor to him, because he was going to have a child and never got to have a child. And so sort of now he had somebody to teach stuff to, that he had always wanted. And so that's why I didn't know that they were going to take this scene out. I think that would have been a travesty.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and like you say, Pete, I mean, he talks about his dad. Like Daniel always asks him, where did you learn this? Where, well, he learned it from his dad. Mr. Miyagi's a fisherman. His dad was a fisherman. Everybody in his village knew karate, and you learned it from your dad. And he doesn't, his kid unfortunately died. Daniel obviously doesn't have a father. So for these two to come together in this movie and kind of fill that void for each other,
And then speaking
He
of
was quite
that, right
sweet.
after this, Miyagi has this nice birthday cake for Daniel. They're like
Mhm.
best friends now, and he gives him a new car.
Yes,
Well, not a new car, but one of his cool cars.
one of his cool cars. He could choose whichever one he wants. What I took from
I-
this scene was that they're having this nice little, birthday cake, and Mr. Miyagi gives him the gi, the karate gi. And Daniel says, "Oh my God, I forgot. I gotta go home and see my mom. She was gonna make me a cake." And then he gets the
Which he
car,
did.
and then the first thing he does is take off the buttons, the golf and stuff, and completely blows his mom off to go find Allie and show her the new
And
car.
that was never resolved at all. I had that written down too. It's like he never went to go see his mom at
Nope.
all, and we never come back to it.
But Daniel and
Uh,
Ellie do make up here and kiss, and I swear to God, he looks like he's trying to suck the life out of her. When he,
I thought
it
that
is
too.
the
It was
most intense
amazing.
kiss.
Right.
Hmm.
Yes.
I
it
had
is.
hard calling it a kiss. It's like he's sucking her soul out of her
Well,
body.
it's very important that they
Oh.
do literally kiss and make up, because as we go to the tournament,
Here it is.
she's the only one who knows the rules of a tournament. She knows how to tie the belt and his gi, like, tie the belt on him and tell him, like, okay, you got to get 3 points, and kind of helps him through the whole tournament thing. Because of course, Mr. Miyagi's never been to a tournament, and Daniel's never been to a tournament.
But she knows it because she's been with Johnny all this
She's
time.
been with
Who
Johnny,
has been
right.
in these tournaments before, right?
Yes.
And she's important because they pass her off as a translator for Mr. Miyagi. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to be on the floor.
Yes.
And that whole scene where he acts like he doesn't understand English is a really funny, awesome scene. And then I love the ending when he says, "You're welcome" to the guy in English, and they just walk away.
Well, and I
Well,
love how Allie just rolls with it. Like, Mr. Miyagi says something in Japanese, and she just makes up something, and it's such a cute scene between Allie and Mr. Miyagi. It's
And
just
speaking of not
we-
resolving with the mom there, this is where I wrote down the mom has pretty much disappeared from this movie.
right.
Mhm.
She is like nowhere to be seen for large chunks now, which is interesting.
Well, she's a
We
single
did actually
working mother, trying
Yeah.
to put food on the
It's like-
table.
Yeah, I know,
Computer
but
business. Computer business is tough.
it's very
Uh,
competitive.
We did skip over a scene that was one of my favorite scenes, very important to the movie as well, where we go to the beach and Miyagi is wearing the catcher's gear, and Danny's learning how to actually punch and kick and all of that sort of stuff. And then they take him out fishing on the fishing boat. And he's learning balance and standing on the top of the edges of the boat. And then he's being all serious and teaching him good lessons about how karate is not about fighting. You learn karate so you don't have to fight. And that was when he got through to him with this lesson and says, "I have hope for you now," or something like that.
Yep.
And then there's the lighthearted scene where he just starts shaking the boat so he falls off and just laughs hysterically, like feet in the air. And
Yeah, you almost like
I
he was
thought that
going to
was
tip
just a
the boat
hilarious
over.
scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and
so
one
I
of the
just thought that was a really great scene.
And one of the first lessons that Mr. Miyagi gives Daniel early on, and this is before they start training, is Mr. Miyagi points to his head and says, "Karate is here," and points to his
Yes.
heart and says it's here, and then points to his stomach and says it's never here. You don't want to, act impulsively. It's not so much about fighting. It's about, more defense, and so you don't have to get into fights. And that is obviously the exact opposite lesson that, the boys are learning over at Cobra Kai. So,
Right. So now
So
back
big
to the
tournament
tournament.
scene, baby.
yes.
Yes. The phrase "dead meat" is used a lot in this movie, by the way, in
Yep.
particular in this tournament. So yeah, we are at the tournament. It starts out a little sluggish for him. He loses the first two, I guess. I don't know what you call it in karate,
Points.
bouts or points.
Points.
Yeah, it's a point. And then he figures it out just in the nick of time, because if he had lost that next point, he would have been out of the whole tournament,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But he figures it out just in time to stay in the tournament and move his way up through the brackets. and all the
And
way
this
to
is
the
where you get the
semifinals.
great montage with that awesome song. You're the
Yes.
best.
So,
Yes.
So fun
and
to watch the
did you-
tournament in fast motion.
did you recognize? I think it's the second competitor, the first person from Cobra Kai that he fights, the second competitor of the tournament. Do you recognize him from anywhere?
No.
That's Lamar from Revenge.
Oh yeah, I knew that.
His limp-wristed approach didn't
Throwing
work well
style.
in karate, but it certainly works well in javelin throwing.
And the mom does show up here, so
Yeah.
after I said that, I'm like, oh, good, there she is supporting
Yeah,
him
she shows up for the big tournament.
right when he's hurt.
So I was a big fan of Dutch and his whole look and his name. I just thought he was the biggest badass of that whole group. I don't know
By
what
the
you guys.
way, so yeah, Dutch, by the way, is the one with the bleach blonde hair in Cobra Kai. That is played by Chad McQueen,
Mhm.
the son of legendary actor Steve McQueen.
Oh, really?
Yes, that is
Yes.
correct.
Oh, by the way, backing up, speaking of family connections, backing up to the Halloween dance, the man in the chicken suit who put
Oh.
an egg on his head.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
there was that too. It was so weird.
That the actor, his name, Brad, you're gonna like this one. That actor's name is Todd Lookinland. He is the
Oh.
brother of Mike Lookinland, who was Bobby on the Brady Bunch.
Wow, there's your Brady Bunch connection.
Wow.
You've told
That's
us
the Brady Bunch
before.
connection. Right.
Todd
So,
looking land. Like
There's
my
a lot
brother
of like
Todd.
family connections. Also, one of the extras that was a Cobra Kai member was played by Andrew Shue, who was Elizabeth Shue's brother.
Yes.
Oh,
And then
really? Which one? Do you remember?
I didn't know
he
he
was
was
just
in this, but I knew of her brother being an actor.
He was
Okay.
just an extra. I don't think his character
At the
even had a
dojo?
name, from what I can find. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the notes I found for this was a lot of the competitors, particularly the Cobra Kai, their uniforms showed their arms because they had natural muscularity at that point. And
Mhm.
Daniel, they put him in a full karate gi because his physique was so
Weak.
scrawny that if they wouldn't have had him in fully covered, they felt nobody would believe that he could beat anybody in karate. Because if you remember that first scene when
I
they
don't
come
believe
into
it anyway.
their new apartment, like his legs and arms are like,
Yeah.
matchsticks.
Well, yeah, because he was wearing a sleeveless shirt.
Yeah.
Early on. Yep.
Mhm.
That was what I thought. I did think that. It's like there's no way. He's too scrawny.
Yes.
So I don't know if this is your favorite moment in the movie, but when he's hurt and he's down and out, and Miyagi's like, you gave it your best, and he begs him to help him, and he saw him do that thing earlier. When he slaps those hands together and the music goes boom, oh my God, I'll get chills for the
You
rest
just
of my
get-
life.
yes.
Goosebumps.
Yep.
I just
And
got
his
the
face,
goosebumps
it's
right
his
now.
face too. He's just so serious, and it's just, God, what a great guy.
Well, and he explains to Mr. Miyagi that if he can't go back out, he'll never find balance. He won't have balance with himself or with Allie or with those guys, and that's the whole lesson that Mr. Miyagi's tried to teach him this whole time, is to have balance in life, and this is something he needs to do in order to find his balance. So, of course, Mr. Miyagi, does what he does.
Daniel LaRusso's gonna fight?
So
I
we
love
get
that
back
guy's
out.
suit, that sweet leisure suit with the cowboy boots.
Oh yeah.
Like that announcer guy
Yes.
was just awesome.
So then we
All
get the
right, so-
infamous sweep the leg.
Yes, sweep the
And-
leg, put him in a body bag.
No, but see, that's the one
Oh.
everybody always gets wrong.
Yep.
It's get him a
Get-
body bag.
get him a body bag.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I thought it was put him in a body bag.
It is. That's what everybody says. But once
Well-
you become an expert of the movie, you finally learn that it's get him a body bag.
Just
And
like how Darth Vader never said, "Luke, I am your father."
Yeah, kind of
Never
like
said
that.
mhm. Well, and in the semifinal, this is where Daniel has to fight Bobby to make it to the final, and of course, Kreese tells him to put him out of commission.
Put him out of commission.
And of course, Bobby was also the kid.
Do you have a problem with that?
No, sensei. And in the Halloween scene, Bobby's the one who's trying to stop the fight,
He has a
And
little bit of a conscience.
yes, and he's the one who's sent out to, put Daniel out of commission so that he can't win the tournament. And you can see it on his face that he's torn and that he doesn't want to do it. But, these kids are fearful of their teacher.
You have to do what he says.
And you have to do what he says. And, you can see the kids start to turn on Kreese during this tournament scene as, he tells Bobby to put him out of commission. Then in the final, he tells Johnny to sweep the leg. And like, you can see his students behind him, just looking at him incredulously as to, why he would be this cheap and to try to hurt a kid. They're starting to turn now as well. So after we get the big hand slap, warm the hands and fix the knee, now we come back out for the climactic final match between Johnny and Daniel. And of course, he can't hardly step on his, the 1 foot because his knee's all messed up. But, he gives it a go.
Balance pays off, and that's why we need the crane technique, because he can only stand on 1 foot.
Yes.
And
we should mention, so our former kind of off and on host, Dave, has always sent out, you've heard this, Pete, right? He always sends out this stand-up guy talking about this movie and about how ridiculous it is when he says you can't defend this.
Right.
Can't defend. And it's like, you can see it coming. It's right there.
It's a little bit of a tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that's what we see in the.
Dave listens and hears that. We brought that up.
Well, you see it in the second Karate Kid movie in the final battle, and of course it, but Mr. Miyagi said if you do it correctly,
well, yeah, I think
it cannot be defended. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Plus, when you do the crane kick, you have to land on the other foot, so he would have had to land on his bad knee.
He did fall though.
Well, he kind of stumbles, but yeah, basically he would have had.
So what? When he gets that kick and that music plays, it is incredible, and you're gonna cry. You have to.
Boom, it's over.
And then you're all right, LaRusso. Thanks a lot. We did it. Credits roll.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was a little shot of Miyagi there smiling and nodding, and that's it.
But Johnny just instantly turns around. You're all right, LaRusso.
Yeah,
after
that was
hating
too cheesy.
Him.
But
Thanks a lot. We did it.
But I think he was, he was starting to turn because he was mad at his, his coach, his sensei, for telling him to.
Things built up during this match.
Right.
So.
But yeah, it just, boom, it's just over. It's got to be about 15 seconds from the crane kick to the credits rolling.
Oh yeah, it's so fast.
Yes. But if you recall the beginning of Karate Kid 2, the scene where Miyagi is in the parking lot with Kreese, and he gives him that nose tweak thing.
Yep.
Originally, that was intended to be the end of this movie. That was all supposed to be a part of the resolution, but they decided later to cut that out and make it the beginning of the next movie. Yeah. And that's why this movie ends.
Well, it is better to end it there. It's just so fast. Yes. It's like jarring.
It is.
That's it.
Right.
But I will say, we brought up Miyagi or Pat Morita up for an Academy Award. This scene, he doesn't say anything. He says so much without talking. The nervous, excited nod he gives when he sees Daniel getting in position for the kick, and the smile at the, my God, it just gives you the chills. It does. Good. That nervous little nod, like, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. It's just, I'm getting the chills right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a good show. It's a great movie.
And that's the end of our podcast. We did it.
Yeah. See you later.
We're going to end this podcast abruptly. I'm going to cut that in so that it just ends abruptly. No Preacher Row. All right. Anything else to say about? Oh, I do have. Wait, I think I actually did get to all the fun facts.
I have no notes.
I actually covered all the fun facts. I don't have anything more.
You had some good ones in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything more, Gifford, on the movie before we move on to the TV shows?
No, I think I said it all already. Great pick. Glad you included it for this month, Pete. Well done.
Yeah. And how it transitions to Cobra Kai. I thought that the TV show, the Netflix show Cobra Kai, does a better job of tying back to the original, considering the original is like 35 years old or whatever, since
Mm-hmm.
it cuts from 35 years to the show, and how they kept the same canons, storylines, actors, pretty much everything is really well done. It's like they really didn't have to rewrite or go back and rewrite
Yeah.
history.
I love the show, and especially the nostalgia of the first season
The
because of all
first
the
season's so good.
so good.
Yes.
The thing, and I still love it, and I'll watch every season. But they get into so many of the follow-up movies, and I don't really know Karate Kid too much, and I don't know Karate Kid 3 at all. And this latest
Yeah.
season with that other crazy guy, like, okay, I get it, but I don't know who he is, so I lose that connection with that
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
But you got to do something. But when Allie came back and made her appearance, it was great, and even the mom made an appearance.
I will
It's pretty
say that
cool how they get them all on there.
the signature move, I will say, in Karate Kid 2 is absolutely ridiculous and would be
Yes.
less effective than the crane technique, in my opinion. I
I
don't
don't
know
even
anything
remember what
about
it
karate.
is, so
It's you put your
So bad.
hands together like this and go bam, 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 back and forth, because it's based on this little Japanese toy. That's
Drum,
the drum
basically,
thing that goes
yeah.
back and forth, and that's what everybody in the crowd is doing this, and that's what
Ah.
inspires him to go like this. And I don't see how you could get any momentum on the punch.
Yeah, based on
Right.
your actions
For
right
doing
now,
that.
that wouldn't work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but maybe I'm doing it wrong.
If done correctly,
correct.
it has no defense.
Yeah, can defend. Can defend.
So I've never seen that move done in any other walk of life or any other movie or anything. Probably a reason for that. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes, correct.
But the show is
TV
great.
shows.
So glad it
Oh, go
came
ahead.
back. And what I love
Yes.
about it is it made William Zabka. I think he's a really good actor. I mean, he's so
He
good
is.
on that show. And it's like, why didn't this guy get some other roles at some point? He's fun to watch. He's a way better actor than Ralph Macchio, in my opinion. He's a way better character too now. So he makes the series, and I just love that.
Ralph Macchio looks like he's had some face work done. He just something looks weird about his face, in that regard.
I don't think I've
William
noticed
Zabka
that. He
just
just
looked.
looks really young still.
Yeah, well, maybe that's it. Maybe it is just natural youth.
Yeah,
To
he's
me, it
over
looks like
60
he's
years
had
old,
some.
and he looks like he's 30.
That's what I'm saying, though. But Zabka looks authentic.
Yeah, he looks
Like
good though
he's a
too. He
down
doesn't
and
look.
out guy, right?
And Elizabeth Shue looked good again too.
Yeah. So our top 5 lists for tonight are TV shows of 1984. Why don't we start with Gifford on that one?
All right. I will have a couple honorable mentions here. Ripley's Believe It or Not. I loved watching that show.
I did too. I didn't have that on my list.
Fall Guy, Magnum PI, Benson, TJ Hooker, Love Boat, and Blue
the Love
Thunder
Boat.
also was a TV show in 1984 that I remember watching. But my top 5, I got Webster at 5, Who's the Boss at 4, Newhart at 3. I believe it was the season premiere or the first season of Airwolf. I loved the show Airwolf. And my number 1 would have been Dukes of Hazzard at this time.
Yeah,
But wasn't this the year though that they had the cousins?
the last season.
It was Vance and Coy. So that wasn't the last season because there was.
No, I thought that was 85.
They came back.
Oh, well, it ended in 85
Oh.
because we talked. It was only on for like a month in 85 because we talked about it when we did that year. I mean, this is
Okay.
the very end of the run here, either way.
Yeah. But I would have been pretty
Yeah.
invested in it.
Yeah. Are you gonna go last, Pete?
Yes.
Okay. So I had a couple of the same honorable mentions as you, but I had like Webster. I had on there. I like to watch that. We've talked a lot about a lot of these shows already. If you listen to our 1985, please go back. We did a really good deep dive on TV that month. But Night Court and Cheers, I have a honorable mention because they were still a little adult. I wasn't into them yet, but I knew they were on. Who's the Boss? Kate and Allie. I watched every week.
Yeah.
Bloopers and Practical Jokes was a show that I love to watch.
I remember you loving that show. You
Yeah.
talked about you would never shut up about that damn
Jesus.
show.
And Punky Brewster and Silver Spoons are shows that I didn't love them, but I mean I watched them. My top 5, 4 and 5 are shows that I think were really getting to the end of their run too. But Alice and the Jeffersons, we watch those every week, and I loved those two shows. Newhart at 3, Family Ties at 2, and then this was when the Cosby Show started. And I've said the first couple seasons of the Cosby Show are just absolute gold. That's my number 1.
Right.
And then it went to really big crap after that.
I tried to keep my list. I tried to find unique shows that I remember watching and everything, but we hadn't really talked about. Like
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Some of these we've talked about. Okay, we talked about Night Court, we talked about Cosby Show and everything. So my honorable mentions, I had Benson, I had Cheers, Who's the Boss, Fat Albert, Give Me a Break. Do you remember that show?
Yep, Nell Carter.
Yep. Do you remember the show V?
I do. I didn't watch it, but I remember it.
It started out as a mini series, but it's about aliens that come, and that was a big deal. That show.
It looked scary to me.
It was scary, but I watched it and I enjoyed it. And in fact, they did have a reboot of it about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. That was on, I think, ABC.
I remember that it came back.
And Jenny and I watched it, and it was all right, but it didn't do well nationally, and it got canceled. Like, we were invested in it, and then it just got cut off. It never had any resolution there or anything. But then we did go back as a result of watching it. We watched the mini series, and it was weird, and it was like the special effects were
less than good.
It was interesting. It didn't hold up super well, but I was big into it at the time. I also had Punky Brewster, and I had written down Three's a Crowd, which was the spinoff of Three's Company that came out in this year, which I actually thought was a pretty good show. I remember watching it, and it followed the life of Jack Tripper, and now he's living with his fiance, and she had a really he owned a restaurant, like a cafe type restaurant. Yeah, and it was the father-in-law, or the fiance's dad. Like, he was a real, like, hoity-toity guy that he was always trying to impress. He was it wasn't played by Ted Knight, but as I recall it, it was like a Ted Knight.
That's what I was thinking when you were saying that.
I don't think it was Ted Knight that played him, but that type of a role. But anyway, and Newhart as well, which should really be in my top 5. But again, I wanted to kind of be a little more original. Number 5, I did have Kate and Allie. That show I did watch all the time. Webster, Knight Rider, and then I had, just getting to my page here, One Day at a Time. We watched that show all the time.
Oh yeah,
I don't think you guys. And Different Strokes.
Oh yeah, that was ending too. I think, wasn't it? Right around, or
yeah,
was it going on for a while yet?
I think it was. It went on for a little while after that, but Different Strokes, I do remember it got worse and worse as it went on.
Yeah.
And then they brought on that little red-haired kid. It was like an Oliver type.
Like
character.
Oliver.
Yep. Because
who was on that Three's a Crowd show?
Who?
Jessica Walter from Arrested Development, which we just talked about.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Really?
She's one of the highest cast people on the list there.
I remember the other character on that show being a guy named EZ. He worked for Jack at the restaurant, and he was like the surfer kind of guy. But he was a funny kind of character. But I think that does it. That closes the yearbook for 1984. Thank you
shut it hard.
Visual reminder.
You bet.
Let's shut it hard. What are we talking about next month?
2002.
Yes.
So we're gonna jump ahead quite a while, but you know what? That's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
God, that's
just pretty crazy.
Time goes by too quickly. Looking forward to it, though. How about we close it out with a little Preacher Row?
That's what we do. Abruptly end it right now. Bye.
Yes.
You're the best.
You're the best.
too clear. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your song is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.